The children deserve a better tomorrow, not reminiscences of the good old days. In this regard, I join Sir Shemore Badejo in this drive to have a better tomorrow for ourselves, our children, and for future generations. Thank you.
Governors of northern states take the exact opposite of the decisions of their southern counterparts, reject power shift to the south, and VAT collection by states.
An investigative report reveals culture of corruption and tribalism at the Nigeria Immigration Service. These likely responsible for the shortage of passports. We'll be speaking with the investigative journalist David Hundain this morning.
And the United Kingdom launches temporary work visas for truck drivers, farmers, and poultry workers. Welcome to the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. It's a really good day today for most people around the world, and we'll share more details about that on our top trending. Welcome again to the breakfast. I am Anetta Felix.
And I am Osaogi Ogbon. Welcome to the second episode of the week, Tuesday morning. We hope that it goes as smooth as can possibly be. Good morning.
Good morning. While we wait for that good news regarding, that global story I mentioned, let's start from home, Nigeria. We know the stance southern governors have taken regarding VAT collection and, the open grazing laws and all of that. And we've been looking to the northern governors to come together, have their own meeting, and let us know what they think. Let's see if we're finding an alignment of voices regarding these issues. So they met yesterday. The Northern Governors Forum met yesterday, and it was in Kaduna. And some of the outcomes of their decision was, one, that they were against zoning to the south, which lots of people have been clamoring for. We have agitations from the indigenous people of Biafra. There are agitations from the south as well regarding Sunday Igboho, agitations for Yoruba Nation, Afenifere agitating as well. And people have been saying maybe zoning to the south would solve all of this. But the northern governors rejected this blatantly. Chairman of the forum and governor of Plateau State, Simon Along, issued a statement after the meeting. Let's read that out for you. He said that the statement to zone power to the south is a contradiction to the provisions of Nigeria's constitution. He said that according to the constitution, Nigeria's elected president will score the majority of votes in at least 25% of votes cast in 2 of 3 states of the Federation, and not that, the president should be from a particular region. It's the president should be someone who wins the election, with the majority of votes. I'm speaking also regarding the value-added tax controversy. He said that VAT is being confused as states by these state governments as sales tax. He also said that if states enact their own VAT laws, multiple taxation will result, and there will be increase in prices of goods and services, and there will be collapse in interstate trade. Simon Lalong also said that VAT is not production tax, and that there's also a confusion regarding the overall effect of tax, and that when people have been saying, southern states generate so much and then northern states generate little and get a lot, he's explaining that the reason for this is that Lagos accounts for over 50% of VAT collection because most telecommunication companies, banks, manufacturing, and other trading activities have their headquarters in Lagos, and that's the simple reason why. He also mentioned that unless the Supreme Court pronounces judgment on this substantive matter between the Rivers State government and the federal government, the matter is sub judice, and that the Northern State Governors Forum would respect that. So it's basically now 2 sides: Northern governors on VAT and zoning, as well as the Southern governors on VAT and zoning. Sorry,
I've always wanted, the conversation on value-added tax to not be a North versus South thing. It's really about the viability of states, and that's really where the conversation should be. But unfortunately, with Nigerian politics, they always would bring in the, regional, angles to some of all of these things that really should be about viability of states. Sadly, a lot of these northern states really are not viable, if we're being honest with ourselves. And, with regards to creating value, a lot of them have not been able to also understand that it is about the value you've been able to create in your state that should increase the amount of value-added tax that, you pay. And, the argument that, there'll be multiple taxation really doesn't work. But of course, they will put all those things forward to, create, a narrative, for their stance. I would move away from value-added tax. I think we've spoken about that too much. The conversation concerning North versus South with regards, zoning, I've said it over and over that politics really has always been a game of interest, and not just here in Nigeria. And so the northern governors and whoever else, is taking a stance based on their own interests and what they think that they would benefit. A few years ago, these same people would have said, it's time for the North to rule. But now that it seems like that may not be coming their way anymore, they obviously would take a totally different stance, a totally different narrative. A lot of those people who are having this argument, would have argued a few years ago, 2019, 2015, that it was time for the North. But now they suddenly do not agree that it has anything to do with zoning or have anything to do with federal character. It is now based on what the Constitution says. Which, of course, you can basically read between the lines and see the reasons they're putting out these narratives. It's always about interest and what they think they can benefit. Sadly, there are, some PDP governors in, these northern governors. I think the northern states have about 5 PDP governors. The, majority of PDP governors are in the south, and they've not been able to convince their PDP governors in the north to, take a totally different stance.
So you think they should be aligned along the lines of their party?
Yeah, it would eventually fall down to parties. And, and it's one thing that you've seen lately that people have, most of the comments that I've seen, a lot of people would say that they don't care what political party it is. As long as that the candidate is from the South, that's where they are voting. And that's most of the narrative that I've seen on social media. They're voting any candidate from the South, regardless of what political party. And if the PDP decides to pick a northern candidate, they've lost their vote. I've seen those comments come, every now and then. But that's, a new angle to it. The big question for me, really, and I think that's what everyone should be really focused on, is why is there that seeming phobia for a northern candidate in 2023? And I feel it's really because of the way the last 8 years, in 2023, has been run. And the way President Muhammadu Buhari has, run the country in the last 8 years, in 2023, 8 years. And that's really where all these conversations are coming from. And there's a little phobia. There's a lot of people who already think they don't want to take that risk again with putting someone from the north there. And it's not because, every candidate from the north is bad or would be terrible for Nigeria, because we've had, a lot of northern presidents. We've had Yar'Adua there before. And, it was a totally different energy. But the way that the current administration has run Nigeria, that's where all this energy is coming from and this phobia is coming from. And now northern governors suddenly remember that there is a constitution and it has to do with 25% and whatnot, that they're saying. But most of the conversations, that I have seen have said simply that whoever it is that presents a Southern candidate, that's who they are voting for. They don't care what party it is. I've also seen people who say that they don't, the APC will never get their votes, regardless of whether it's a North or West or East or Middle Belt candidate that they put forward. But that's where all these conversations are coming from. The Northern governors also finally should realize that the most important thing, the same place that they had this meeting yesterday in Kaduna, lost about 50 lives in the last 48 hours to, banditry and Boko Haram and whatever. There's videos and pictures of people who were murdered, dozens of people. That same state is where they're having discussions on whether it's a northern candidate or southern candidate in 2023. What is most important to the Kaduna State governor now should be Bethel High School. It should be the people who have been killed in his state. It should be protecting life and property in his state. And that should be the only thing of utmost importance, not whether, not who is going to be running for president in 2023.
Interesting angles there. Looking forward to, talk more about this with some political and economic experts later on at the breakfast. Our next top-trending story is very interesting, and here's why. First of all, the United Kingdom, we have a track for you there. Let's take a look. Why didn't you tell us this one since?
With a view to promoting unity and peace in the nation, notwithstanding their comments, the forum unanimously condemned the statement by the Southern Governors Forum that the presidency must go to the South. The statement is quite contradictory with the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, that the elected president shall score the majority votes, score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 states of the Federation. C, in the case of run-up, simple majority will win the election. The Northern State Governors Forum considered the ongoing national debate on collection of value-added tax, VAT. As responsible leaders, while we are concerned by the fact that the matter is sub judice, we, however, for the purposes of educating the public, make the following observations. A, the judgment of the Federal High Court calls to question the constitutionality of VAT, withholding tax, education tax, Niger Delta Development Commission, National Information Technology Development Agency, 13% derivation, National Economic Development Council, and many other currently levied and collected by the Federal Government of Nigeria and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. B, Rivers and Lagos State government had enacted their own VAT laws, and the Southern Governors Forum have expressed support for this course of action. C, VAT is being confused by these state governments as a sales tax. If every state enacted its own VAT law, multiple taxation will result in increase of prices of goods and services and collapse in interstate trade. VAT is not a production tax like excise, but terminal tax which is paid by the ultimate consumer.
Just quick clips from the Northern Governors meeting yesterday. And of course, we have a extensive discussion about this sometime during the show this morning. So stay with us and we will look deeper into some of those details.
And next to our next top trending story, the United Kingdom currently is facing labor shortages in the haulage and food industry. So they're basically saying that these challenges have been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, concerns with Brexit, and an aging population. So right now, the UK says, this is definitely from a logistics company in the UK, that the UK needs about 90,000 truck drivers. And just on the back of that, to solve these challenges regarding the delivery of fuel, products and goods as well, the United Kingdom has launched a special work visa, and that's for immigrants, lorry drivers and farmers, as well as poultry workers in the country. So, I mean, that really is the gist of it. The United Kingdom right now is facing challenges. They need drivers, they need poultry workers, they need farmers, and they're saying, let's solve this by opening our borders and let people from Nigeria and other countries come in. You get visas to work in the UK for 3 months, and that visa would expire by the eve of Christmas. So lots of Nigerians really have been talking about this on social media, saying, rather than spend all my time in class, reading and having a first class, and now I have no job, I should have spent my time learning how to drive a truck. I would have gone to the UK, make so much money, convert that to Naira, and you're a rich man by Christmas.
Yeah. And, you know, aside I think the lack of truck drivers has also created a petrol scarcity in the UK also. It's not very familiar pictures that we've seen, or videos that we've seen, you know, petrol queues.
There's actually no fuel scarcity, according to the news. There is fuel. I mean, what I've seen on our channel is the fact that they do not have enough drivers to actually drive. No, there's no fuel scarcity. There is fuel. It is the drivers who should, you know, make that delivery. So there's a difference. The problem is with the distribution, not with the availability of fuel. I don't know if you get that correct.
So there's fuel, but there's no fuel in the station.
Yes, there's a problem with distribution, not with the availability of fuel.
Great, but there's fuel, but there's no fuel in the station. So there's a scarcity in stations, right?
Sergey, however you want
it's
to interpret it.
It's pretty much the same thing when Ipman goes on strike in Nigeria, or Pengassan goes on strike, and they say, oh, truck drivers in Nigeria on strike, and there's petrol scarcity. So it's the same thing. I'm saying the lack of drivers,
if that's how you want to say it, that's fine.
The lack of truck drivers has created a fuel scarcity in the UK. It's not because, of course, I know that there's petrol. Jesus Christ. Anyway, focus really is immigration to the UK and, you know,
the work visas, yes.
Yes, you know, I wouldn't, you know, blame any Nigerian who decides to leave whatever job they've been doing here, you know, and move to the UK. I think the focus for many people who are moving there, of course, a lot of them can drive trucks, but
can they even afford the flight tickets? That's another question.
Yeah, so, well, you'll figure it out. You know, you'll find a way around it. You
use
know,
money to make money.
I think I spoke about this yesterday or 2 days ago, that the wave, they call it the Japa wave, that is currently going on in Nigeria, very likely has not been witnessed in a very, very long time. Maybe, you know, during Abacha's time, or, you know, President Buhari's time, when he was military administrator in, you know, in the 80s. Those are the only 2 times that we've seen these number of Nigerians leaving the country in droves, you know, and I'm not talking about just doctors now. I'm talking about people who have every skill whatsoever. If you go online, you know, go on, you know, social media, you would see, just search for the hashtag Goodbye Nigeria. There's so many. And, you know, they are all moving to Finland, to Switzerland, Australia, UK, Canada, wherever it is, to find greener pastures. They are not 100% sure what it exactly would be like, but at least it gives them a chance of, you know, some hope that things will be better when they get there. So, yes, the UK would have its own struggles. And, you know, somehow, somewhere, I'm sure the government will be able to balance things out. They would also have to find their footing again after Brexit. They would have to, you know, renegotiate a lot of, you know, decisions that they've taken, I believe. But, you know, it will, you know, and I'm sure that they will be able to populate. They're talking about 10,000 and even more truck drivers and drivers in every other, you know, manual space like that. So they would be able to fill up that space. There's many people from different countries that are trying to get into the UK. I just don't know what happens next. And like you said, the visa expires, you know, just before Christmas. I don't know what happens next, if most of those people will come back or not, or they would be there.
But we know that the UK would definitely take serious measures to make sure these people are properly documented and they can find and track them. But we know Nigerians, and we know people who have even gone to the Olympics and never came back.
Yeah,
so there's been stories like that. So it just means that with these tens of thousands of Nigerians and other immigrants who will be coming into the UK, not all of them might come back at the eve of Christmas.
No, I'm sure they're well. Anyway, it's an interesting time across the world, you know, and you know I'm sure that the United Kingdom itself will be able to figure this out, you know, and it's also a great opportunity. Let's also quickly note that it's not just truck drivers. You know, there's many fields, even in healthcare, that are seriously lacking in the UK that will be populated. I saw a picture 2 days ago, I think on Twitter, where a person said took a picture, in a healthcare facility in the UK that had about 7 Nigerian nurses that had moved in sometime this year. Yes, and they were all working. And he himself was surrounded by all 7 of them. So it's an interesting time to see how much people would take advantage of this time and relocate and leave Nigeria.
So our next top trending story, goes back to what I mentioned earlier, the fact that lots of women really have seen what's happened in the US right now as a victory regarding justice. R. Kelly, R&B singer, has been facing charges of, sexual assault, sex trafficking, racketeering, and all of that. And yesterday, after about a 9-hour debate, jurors said they found him guilty of 1 count of racketeering and about 8 counts, of violating the Mann Act, which is an act in the U.S. that's against sex trafficking. So they basically said that R. Kelly was found guilty of running an enterprise through which he exploited his power and his time to prey on underage girls, young women, and at least 2 male victims. He should be sentenced by May 4th, 2022. And the U.S. attorney in the District of New York said that the verdict of yesterday forever brands R. Kelly as a predator who used his fame and his fortune to prey on the young, on the vulnerable, and on the voiceless for his own sexual gratification. They basically went on and on to say that he ensnared girls in a web of sex, abuse, exploitation, and humiliation, and commended the girls for their bravery in coming out to speak, about this and to share their stories. Even though at first, people didn't believe some of these girls when you come out to say R. Kelly sexually harassed them or all of that. But finally, years later, it's all been brought to the table, and R. Kelly has been found guilty of sex trafficking.
Good luck to him. His lawyer, in an interview yesterday, was saying that he was going to appeal. But I don't think there's any way on earth, except maybe death, is the only way that R. Kelly will, evade jail. And I'm talking about jail for a very, very long time, if not life imprisonment, but jail for at least 30, 50 years. There's no way that he's going to evade any of that because, of course, he has court cases in many other states, not just, the one that we're speaking about now. There's other states that he's been accused of the same, similar crimes. And, I think we've said it here before that, no matter how big or how popular you are, it's just one tiny mistake here when you lose control of yourself that eventually ruins that career. Pretty much the same thing almost happened to Bill Cosby, but obviously there's a very, very far cry from the Bill Cosby case, to the R. Kelly case. R. Kelly's case is is concerning dozens of girls, from, when he was just a rising, star back then. And like you mentioned, it also includes males. And so he basically ran a very, very dirty life as a career, an abusive life as a superstar. There's no difference really between him and Epstein, or what's his name? The Jeffrey Epstein, yeah. Really not different. The only difference is that one is white and one is black. But he really will never in any way evade jail. And it's definitely victory for every person who had to suffer, from his atrocities. And Aaliyah herself, who was one of the most popular also, who he got married to when she was just 15. And so they were very likely already, he was abusing her sexually, and eventually got to marry her at that age, falsified records, bribed some officials to get her married at that age. So good luck to him. He's going to be somebody's wife in jail, obviously. He should enjoy it.
Oh my, wicked. All right, those are our top trending stories this morning. And we'll take a break here and return with Off the Press. Across the papers, we're seeing the issue between the North and South regarding power shift for 2023. More on that after the break.
Businesses in Africa can be very challenging. In Nigeria, it is particularly intimidating, and successful builders have learned how to navigate a hostile environment to unlock opportunities. But one major challenge businesses face is how to filter through the noise and identify where their ideal customers exist. Get insight and practical steps from industry players and captains of industries. Here are success stories to help you make informed decisions as you scale your business in Nigeria. Watch Business Insights at this time on PlusTvAfrica.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. NIMASA bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Great to have you back on The Breakfast here on PlusTvAfrica. And now let's go to Off the Press, where we have a review of the major stories making headlines across Nigeria today. I'm kicking off with the Punch newspapers, and we'll be on your screen in just a few seconds. A big one there is referring to the Northern Governors' opposition. It says, anger trails Northern Governors' opposition to 2023 power shift. Governors' demand for South presidency in 2023 unconstitutional, says the forum. And it says here, Northern governors working towards Nigeria's breakup, says Ohaneze. Regional governors paying lip service to Nigeria's unity. And that is from Afenifere. Petrol subsidy hits 905.27 billion naira. Oil rises to $79 a barrel. And also Mambila Power Project construction begins before 2022, says the Senate. We are investigating extortion of inbound travelers at airports. And that's from the federal government. Also on the Punch, e-Naira offers cheaper, fast remittance options, says the CBN. And federal government spent 1.3 trillion on agricultural imports in 6 months. That is from the NBS. A few other stories on the Punch this morning. 74% global youth population in Nigeria. 9 others in 2041. 48 killed in Kaduna fresh attacks. Sokapu blames police. 1 dies, 16 rescued as Lagos boat hits rock. And group floods Oshun with Oshimbajo's 2023 presidential post. We can also find here PDP knocks Ogun government over Abiodun, Deputy Speaker's foreign trips. Those are the stories we can take on the Punch.
From the Punch newspaper, let's go to the leadership. 2023 presidency. Northern governors, traditional leaders reject power shift. Slam Southern governors over stance on zoning. Call for caution over VAT controversy. Urge armed forces to sustain onslaught against terrorists. Rivers Lagos say they will wait for Supreme Court pronouncement. Above that headline on the leadership, Brent crude nears $80 as supply tightens across regions. Troops repel attack. Eliminate several bandits in Sokoto. Fan shuts Kebbi Airport over 33 million naira debt. Electoral Act, Saraki CSOs urge National Assembly to act in national interest. COVID-19, FG decries extortion of travelers at airports. Also on the leadership newspaper, secrecy in government undermining access to information. That's according to the NGE, says presidency, NAS are major culprits.
All right, let's move away from the leadership now and see what we can find on the Daily Independent. Experts list 5G technology snags, want realities embraced. Ohaneze asks Southeast governors to launch a Bubiagu security outfit. And e-transmission of results, NCC can't dictate to us, says INEC. On insecurity, we need Berlin kind of walls at our borders, Navy tells reps. Court orders AGF to take over prosecution of former Imo governor. Northern governors reject rotation of presidency, back FG on value-added tax. Sit-at-home hoodlums set vehicle carrying vegetables ablaze in Enugu. An electoral act, Saraki urges National Assembly panel to act in national interest. Still on the Daily Independent, elite in danger over insecurity, Ngige laments. $600 billion siphoned from Nigeria from 1960 till date. Those are the ones on the Daily Independent.
Okay, let's now turn to the next newspaper. Let's look at The Nation. The story says, North's governors, emirs, reject power shift in 2023. It will be unconstitutional. Akeredolu says they have a right to their opinion. 42 killed, houses razed in Kaduna attacks. Mob lynched police, Lagos police chief won't die in vain, says CP. Government raises visitation panel for LASU. 7.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines expected. Ohaneze, 6 ends to killings, arson in Southeast. Let Ebubuagu function. Arome speaks as NNPC board chair, good for zone. Ekiti community is cut off as link bridge collapses. UI names Bursa. Also, sit-at-home traders devise means to recoup losses. And 13 wedding guests die in crash. Those are the stories on the Nation newspaper. Let's now say hello to our guest, Mr. Chris Nwandu, publisher of CKN News. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So across the papers, the story that we see is regarding the meeting by the Northern governors in Kaduna yesterday. And it's saying that the Northern governors basically have rejected a power shift to the South in 2023, saying it is unconstitutional and that they back the federal government on VAT. What do you say?
Fantastic. Good. Nice one, I would say. It's really, I'm not shocked, and neither am I surprised, but it has always reaffirmed my belief, severally, which I've always expressed, that the northern politicians seem to be more smarter, quote and unquote, smarter than their southern counterparts. And when it comes to politics, they have a way of uniting within themselves and taking decisions which is in their own personal interest or their own best interest to the detriment of other parts of the country, especially the south. It's only the south that always have an issue. Unity has never been a problem of the North. They are well united, irrespective of whatever you feel. Come to think of it, the chairman of that governors forum is from the North Central, and so it's the North that is speaking. And this goes to show, and it's good that the leaders of the South are seeing what is happening, because I remember vividly what happened in 2018. Practically most of them connived and gagged themselves in making sure that a southern president was supposed to go for a second term, didn't have that second term, and they violently refused him. They said all sorts of things about him. He was clueless, he was terrible, he's this, he's that, and the rest of them. And that was an opportunity for the South to have a second shot at the presidency under Goodluck Jonathan. But they didn't do the needful. They joined forces with the North and picked a northern presidential candidate, the president of President Muhammadu Buhari, who eventually won the election. They believe that, and then the North never said anything about power rotation, about being unconstitutional. They were seeking to the fact that, the South, you've had your turn. Let us worry that even that of the North, that was started by Yar'Adua, was not finished. That Goodluck Jonathan finished the tenure of this, so that is the turn of the North. Then all of them were in unity and made sure that narrative goes. But now it has come to the power supposed to return back to the South. All of them have come together to say, now it's unconstitutional for anybody to say that. But let us also put in perspective. Is there anything in the Constitution that says that the presidency must rotate back to the South? There is nothing in the Constitution that. There is nothing in the Constitution that it must be turned by North will take it, South will take it. It is only a political arrangement by the political parties, which was started in 1999 by the PDP and other parties then, that, for better understanding, for fair play, equity and fair play, let the North, the South take, which was now came by Obasanjo. After the South, then the North will also have its turn. But if the northern governors are not being economical with the truth, and they should know that this has been the policy, that it's after 8 years, as it were, that definitely the South is supposed to have its turn. But that is for they are saying northern governors, which means that it's across party line. So it's not only the APCs that are talking now, it's both the APC and the PDP governors from the North that are saying that there shouldn't be any power rotation, that we should stick to the Constitution. But as I said earlier, it's so obvious that the northern politicians are much smarter, quote unquote, than their standard counterpart. And let's wait and see how this pans out.
All right. Mr. Wandu, in the same state where this meeting was held, there's a report of 42 lives that were lost in Kaduna Fresh crisis. So while the governors were meeting, I guess some bandits, hoodlums, terrorists were also busy. So I want you to, quickly respond to that. It says 48 killed in Kaduna Fresh attacks. Sokapu blames police. And this is on the Punch newspapers this morning.
My condolences goes to the families of the bereaved, and may their souls rest in peace. But their souls will not rest in peace until the perpetrators of this evil are apprehended and dealt with comprehensively. That is on one part. Second part is, I'm waiting to see what Nasir El-Rufai is going to say. Because from information we had, the killing was alluded to Fulani headsmen and certain bandits. That has not been fully confirmed. But if that is the narrative, then that brings to question the statement issued by the Kaduna State Governor a few days back that the anti-grazing law being enacted by the southern governors that we know that is not tenable, that the law cannot be implemented at the rest of them. He was deriding the southern governors for taking the measures to secure their various states. Now, you can see what is happening in states. It has no solution to the problem in Kaduna State. Kaduna has become a killing field for bandits, terrorists. I don't really like using the word, as I always say on this program. It has become a home to terrorists. And the governor is totally is handicapped. He doesn't even know what to do again. On a daily basis, his people are being killed. Students are being kidnapped in Kaduna State on a daily basis in their tens and hundreds, and the governor practically is not being able to do anything about it. What do you see him saying? The southern governors are just playing to the gallery. The issue of the open grazing law will not is not tenable, and blah blah blah. He's not removing the log in his own eyes and just looking at the place in the other people's eyes. So let us write up to the occasion. He's the Chief Security Officer of Kaduna State. The security of life and properties of people of Kaduna State rests solely on his laps. Let him do the needful and secure his people rather than just going and blaming other governors who are doing all they can to be able to secure their own people through the enactment of some of these laws, which they see will be able to nip in the bud the various killings that is happening in their states. So as I say once again, my condolences to the families of the deceased. But you can be rest assured that this might not be the last of it. Kaduna has become a killing field, and the governor seems to have pissed about this.
Okay, so on the Punch newspaper, there's a story on the top right corner that says the federal government spent 1.3 trillion naira on agricultural imports in 6 months. That's according to the Nigerian Bureau of the National Bureau of Statistics. So when I took a closer look at the story, it said that Nigeria basically was importing things like durum wheat. We're importing mackerel, herrings, edible mixtures, crude palm oil, malts, and these things are imported from countries like Canada, Denmark, Russia, and France. And when we keep talking about Nigeria being the giant of Africa with all our agricultural blessings, so to speak, would you say it's an irony that we're importing as much as 1.3 trillion naira worth of agricultural goods in just the first 6 months of the year?
Did I say Nigeria is the giant of Africa? Nigeria is an elephant with a clay feet. There is nothing giant about Africa. Even smaller countries like Ghana are doing far better than Africa. So I think we should stop deluding ourselves with that narrative that Nigeria is no giant. The giant of Africa know themselves. We can call them South Africa, Ghana, Rwanda. These are, I can see my brother smiling there. Those are giants because for you to call yourself a giant, there are certain indices that you must be able to meet. That is what qualifies you. It's not by your size. It's not by your number. It has indices, indices by the work body that determines who a giant is or who not. Nigeria is an elephant with clay feet. But back to the question of agriculture. It's rather unfortunate that the gain that we made in the last few years has been totally eroded. We made so much gain, especially in the area of agriculture, which we look at as an alternative to our oil revenue that was basically due to the area. And I remember what the last regime did. Don't forget what will pay someone like additional to where he is today because of his achievement as a minister of agriculture. You knew where the issue of rice got to. You knew where the issue of cassava got to. You knew the issue of palm oil. You remember so many other that we were making so much input in the area of agriculture that we even started exporting. But that over the years, in the past 6 years, have been completely eroded. We are paying this service to agriculture, which to me would have been an alternative for us. We wouldn't have been suffering what we are suffering now if not for the issue of just depending on just solely oil. But also beyond that, it's also the issue of insecurity. Farmers are not, people are not going to the farms again. Fulani herdsmen and their cohorts are killing people at will. Bandits are kidnapping. Terrorists are on the prowl, killing people. So people get afraid to go back to the farm, and that is the problem we are having. So if you can also handle the issue of insecurity, that is a spiral effect over and above every other aspect of human life, be it socially, physically, economically, or whatever, even politically. That is where we find ourselves now. So that we are spending so much in importing is not news to me. I'm sure we've imported more than that. They are just being economical with the truth. But the fact remains that this is not the way to go. This government in 2015, when we are coming in, said that one of their priorities is going to be the area of agriculture and also be able to diversify the economy of Nigeria. How do you diversify the economy without having a paradigm shift from your number one oil earner, which is oil, which in itself is going out of fashion across the globe? So many countries are not buying oil again. So agriculture would have been the main key. But what do we do? I was so surprised when I heard some few days back, when I heard that we are importing palm oil. Palm oil. If you go to my village in the Imo State, if you see what we do with palm oil, we have so much palm fruit. What in those states? There's so much we can do. The palm fruit, the Malaysia, which is one of the number one exporter or producer of palm oil. We are told, came to Nigeria in the 60s to take our palm oil fruit to Malaysia. Now they are number 1 in the world. I don't even know which number we are. So that is the problem we have. And it all boils down to leadership. Those we have at the helms of affairs next to nothing about how to go about leadership. And that to me is where we find ourselves, and it's rather unfortunate. But we can still do the needful if we do the right thing and get it going.
All right, let's talk a little bit more security now. There's something about a Berlin Wall here on the Daily Independent. It says on insecurity, we need Berlin kind of walls rather, at our Navy, or at our borders rather, Navy tells reps. So I want to quickly share your thoughts on the efforts we've put into securing Nigeria's borders in the last decade or more. And if we truly should be talking about building a Berlin Wall around Nigeria.
To me, that is laughable. Berlin Wall. Where are you going to put the wall? In Sokoto or in Niger State or in Imo State, in my state, or even Edo State? Or where are you going to put the wall? It's just laughable. Even the Berlin Wall collapsed. Didn't you see that the Berlin Wall collapsed? Didn't you see that the wall collapsed and Germany was unified? The fall of the Berlin Wall was what brought about President Merkel. She used to be from the start, from the Eastern Germany, yeah. And that is what we are talking about. When the wall collapsed and West and East decided to come together again, and they felt that the East have been submerged in leadership in Germany, so they voted for somebody from the eastern part. And that is how Angela Merkel, who has come out to be one of the best leader that Germany has ever had, although her party just lost narrowly at the election just completed. But back to the issue is not war. You can build war. But when you're not talking of war, I don't even know, okay, let's start with Benin now. By the time you build a wall within that Cotonou, as what happened to the Mogun? There's another entry point at Ogun where people smuggle things and rest. What we need is sophisticated equipment to be able to have an aerial view of our borders. That is what happened across the globe. Even Donald Trump was trying to build a wall in the U.S. for 4 years. Was he able to build a wall? He just tried his best along the Mexico. You remember his campaign slogan that he was going to build a wall within the Mexico border. How many did we? What we still need is a holistic approach to border security, manning our borders. Aerially also we should be able to do that. But the fact is that we have one of the most porous borders in the world. Anybody can walk into Nigeria from anywhere without any problem. So what I should be thinking is that if it's the House of Reps that said that, what they should be thinking is that making sure that they budget enough for the immigration services, the police, and the other relevant agencies that will be able to man our border better. That we are going to build a wall, my brother, forget it.
Still on that Daily Independent, there's a story there, and it says $600 billion siphoned from Nigeria from 1960 to date. And that's a statement by the former External Affairs Minister during General Ibrahim Babangida's regime, Professor Bola Akiyemi. Now, he basically went on to detail the issues of illegal and illicit financial flows in Nigeria since from 1960 to date. Nigerians, politicians, and foreign companies that are in Nigeria are complicit in siphoning money out of Nigeria in their hundreds of billions. So he also talked about Nigeria's borrowing, to fund our infrastructure and all of that, to say that if we can actually cut these leakages in our finances, we wouldn't need to borrow. Do you agree?
Well, that point, yes, I agree with you. On the first, siphoning money is not something that is new. It started right from our independence when we took over reign of government from British and from across board. Don't forget that part of what led to Isha insurgency in this 1964 Republic was that the killing and rest of it was because of the army accused the politicians of corruption and rest of them. So it's not something of today. Yes, I agree. Nigerian money is being siphoned, especially by politicians, then with the aid of other agencies. But don't forget that, is the government doing the right thing? I'm still back. Most of when I talk about the current government. I don't want to be talking about the past, because the past is behind us. For you to be able to learn what we have to focus on today and also the future. So, in as much as the essence of history is to look at the past to better today and tomorrow. But let us also situate the situation as it. Now, let us even start with the most recent. A report of the rot in the NDDC has been submitted to the president. Till now, the federal government is still studying that report. Serious, it wasn't billions, trillions of naira were siphoned and stolen by certain individuals, which would by now expected the federal government to look at the report and publish the names of those, and those 5 culpable should be arrested immediately, tried, and jailed. Until we start doing that, the issue will be paying lip service to the issue of corruption, and that is, and it's not only there, across board. Most of this money that we are stolen can be used to better the infrastructure in Nigeria. Look at the state of our roads, terrible. Look at the hospitals, terrible. Look at the state of education, terrible. Which area can you pinpoint and say that we are making progress? None. So, apart from bad leadership, our second problem is that of corruption. And the government, especially the president, Muhammadu Buhari, during his campaign, said that he's going to tackle corruption effectively. In fact, it was two of the reasons why Nigeria was because of insecurity, feeling that being a former general, you'll be able to handle insecurity properly. Then the second is that of corruption. But now, what do we have? Even the money that we recovered from abroad, I was telling about, what did we use them for? Have we been able to account for the ones that we recovered? My sister, is a long walk for us.
All right. Chris Wando, thank you very much for your time this morning. As always, we enjoy your perspective on national issues. We wish you a very interesting Tuesday ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and do have a nice day.
You too. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going a little bit back in history to share with you what happened on this day, the 28th of September, many years ago.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
You're welcome back to The Breakfast on PlusTvAfrica. Let's now go back in time to 2012 on this day in history and the 20th of September. What happened today really was something that most women were very unpleased with, and that's because they were traveling to Saudi Arabia for that pilgrimage, and they were stopped because they were unaccompanied by a man. So the result of that was that Nigeria effectively suspended flights to Saudi Arabia after hundreds of Nigerian women traveled without a male escort. And they were mostly women between the age of 25 and 35. And they were stopped at the airports in Jeddah and Medina. So the story really here was that, and the main problem was that their surnames did not correspond with those of their husbands or the male guardian on visa documentation. So they're basically saying that they had to be turned back. Some women turned back in tears, some carried babies and all of that. So it really was something that, people opposed to say that they wish that they could have, made that holy pilgrimage. Most Muslims, look forward to that pilgrimage, at least once. And each Muslim country can send at most 1,000 pilgrims per million citizens. So when this issue happened at that time, when women had to be turned back because they were unaccompanied by a man, or their surname did not match the documentation of, the guy that they were going with, they had to be turned back, and Nigeria had to suspend flights to Saudi Arabia on this day in history.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why the names didn't match. Was this something that, we're not sure happened, or is there some fraud, that was going on there? I'm really not sure.
Maybe.
And I probably also need to figure out more about what the rules are with women going, to Saudi Arabia for Hajj. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But the good thing is, that was 2012, and over time, I think Saudi Arabia has also begun to relax some of its, laws that were a little, stringent with regards females. I think they've also been, created, open up laws for women to be able to drive and to work and do some of the things that were almost impossible, a decade ago. Which, I believe is something that a lot of other countries should be able to also, a lot of Muslim countries should also be able to look at and, maybe also follow suit. Some of the tightening of laws, it's very, very sad seeing what's going on in Afghanistan today. Girls can't go to school, women aren't allowed to come outside, you can't even interview women. I saw a post a few days ago of that women aren't allowed to, be interviewed on the radio, or are not allowed to listen to radio or to contribute to radio programs and some of all of that.
So their voices are essentially being cut off.
Yeah, and it's really, really sad. And I hope, that Afghanistan is able to get itself out of that place in little or no time. So this was 2012. It might have been a problem with documentation, may have been, them also trying to figure out ways to leave Nigeria. I really have no idea how that happened, but it was eventually handled by the Nigerian government and the Saudi Arabian government. So it's just a little bit of history for us this morning. We'll take a short break. When we come back, what is going on with the Nigerian Immigration Service? Why aren't Nigerians being able to get passport booklets as quickly as they normally should? An investigative journalist, David Hundeyin, has put out a report a few days ago that detailed a lot that he will be sharing with us this morning, and that comes up right after this short break. Good morning. Welcome back to The Breakfast. An investigative report a few days ago shocked many Nigerians with the details and the bits of information, that were released by investigative journalist David Hundeyin. He basically was exposing, loads of corruption that were going on in the Nigerian Immigration Service and the reasons why Nigerians may have been struggling to get their passports in time. We're speaking this morning with that investigative journalist, David Hundeyin, who's joining us via Zoom. Good morning, and thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. So it must have taken you some time to put this, information together, do as much research as possible. But I want us to start with you telling us the biggest findings for you in this, report that you put out.
Okay, so for me, there were three major findings, and in order of importance, I would say the third most important finding was that, first of all, within the Nigerian Immigration Service, there seems to be like a whole other set of processes that the public is not aware of, processes which are not written down anywhere, which sort of the people, the civil servants involved, just kind of make it up as they go along. So when you go and apply for a passport, and you pay your 30,000 naira or however much it is, you don't really understand the politics going on in there and why it is that you may not get, you may get a passport in a month, you might get it in a year, depending on who is handling your case, depending on what part of the country the person handling your case is from, depending on which passport office you applied at. So, for example, if you applied at the Kogi Passport Command, there will be a very low possibility that it will come out in a reasonable space of time. So, when I spoke to people in and around the immigration service, I was able to ascertain that there is a very, it's unstated, but very blatant a policy of modernization going on in the immigration service, which actually started under the previous Comptroller General, which has continued into this regime, where the postings that are considered to be desirable, such as Lagos and Abuja, are being given exclusively to the immigration officers of northern origin, while the southern officers are being transferred out to places like Sokoto and whatnot. That was the first finding. The second finding, in order of importance, was that the company that actually prints these passports is a lot more powerful than Nigerians are aware of. This company essentially has the power to create Nigerian citizens out of thin air. This company has full control of the supply chain of Nigerian passports from end to end. So it handles the information capture, the database management, and also subcontracts the printing to a Malaysian company. And the company is so powerful that the federal government actually is not even in a position to retrieve the contract from this company, because this company essentially has made it so that, I don't know how it happened like that the contract that was signed made it such that the company alone has access to certain things that even the Nigerian Immigration Service is not able to carry out maintenance work on the databases of the Nigerian passport system. Is not able to carry out any basic physical maintenance on the systems. If the system goes down at any passport office, officers of Nigerian Immigration Office literally cannot do anything about it. It's the company itself. The company is called ISTL, which has to come in and sort everything out. So the Immigration Service essentially is less powerful than this private entity that nobody has ever heard of. This private company is more powerful within the immigration space than the Nigerian Immigration Service itself. And then the most important finding was that the person who actually runs this company, the owner of this company, is someone who under no circumstances is supposed to hold such a contract, which is so critical to Nigeria's national security. This person used to be a diplomat, and this person was dismissed from the diplomatic service in the early 1980s after being indicted for drug trafficking, using his diplomatic status and his diplomatic immunity to traffic drugs into the United States. So there's, I got hold of court documents from the United States District Court of New Jersey, dating back to 1979, which essentially contained a full indictment, 7-page indictment of this diplomat. His name is Olayinka Sonayon Fisher, and then also detailed the allegations against his other the other members of his drug ring, who all sort of ratted each other out. And the story became very clear that this person was contacted by an American businessman called Tracy Wong, who was working with a convicted drug dealer called Anthony Marguerite. And Tracy Wong basically brought this diplomat into the operation that, look, we have millions of dollars worth of cocaine that is being trafficked from South America and Asia. And we want to bring it into the US. But we want you to help us bring it into the US because you are a diplomat, so you have diplomatic immunity. Your bags are not searched when you're traveling into the US. You have an opportunity to traffic drugs that most people do not. Bear in mind that this fellow was not just an ordinary diplomat. He was a very senior diplomat. He was the second secretary of Nigeria's mission to the UN in the mid to late 1970s. So according to court documents, sorry?
Oh, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, so according to the court documents, for at least 2 years, from 1978 onward, he was working with this drug ring and pushing millions of dollars worth of cocaine into the US. And for each trip, he was paid approximately $50,000 as his cut. And this person was dismissed from the service, and for whatever reason, even though he was the US had called for him to be extradited, he was shielded, he was protected by the Nigerian government for whatever reason. We can only speculate as to what reason there was. Maybe he was working with someone in the government, maybe he was working on behalf of someone, maybe he had a godfather in the government, we don't know. And he disappeared from the public eye, and then reappeared in 2003 under President Obasanjo as the CEO of this company, ISTL. I somehow got hold of this contract, and somehow with that kind of colorful past, was awarded a contract, the sole contract, to print Nigerian passport booklets and to maintain the information database of Nigerian passport holders. So essentially, if you hold a Nigerian passport, like the Nigerian e-passport, all your details are in the hands of an indicted drug trafficker, which I found completely absurd. And the fact that the DSS, which, I mean, you and I know that in some cases, even if you're going to handle just something as simple as a road contract in Nigeria, the DSS will vet you to your third generation. So it was just very surprising to me that how is it that such a person, who under no circumstances, even by the wording of the Public Procurement Act of 2007, should have been nowhere near being given this kind of public procurement contract, was cleared somehow by the security services to hold not just a public contract, but that kind of public contract with such severe implications for Nigeria's national security. So I thought that was a story that definitely needed to be told.
Okay, David, this really is explosive. Lots of allegations here. And Mr. Fisher, you mentioned, is one of 3 people you say had so much influence in the Nigerian Immigration Service. Tell us more about the other 2 people.
So the first that was mentioned was the immediate past Controller General, that is Mohammed Babandede. And based on the conversations that I had with the sources in and around the service, Mr. Babandede essentially was the one who, obviously, without saying so explicitly, instituted the northernization policy in the Nigerian Immigration Service, whereby starting with the Ikoyi Passport Command specifically, which is perceived within the service as sort of the most desirable place to be posted in Nigeria in terms of making money, that command was essentially fully northernized. The majority of the officers of southern extraction working there were transferred out and replaced with northern officers whose goal there was to make money. And this was repeated in Abuja and in sort of the more desirable postings across the country, such that in Lagos, for example, where there are 3 passport offices, only one of these passport offices is staffed by a southerner, and the other 2, which are staffed by northerners, are the passport office in Amodofe is headed by southerner. The other 2, which are headed by northerners, are staffed almost entirely by northerners, and this is a pattern that repeats itself across the country. That was the first part of what he was responsible for. The second thing he did was that during his tenure, the payment system for paying the wages and entitlements of Nigerian Immigration Service staff was moved to the IPPIS, which is sort of the system that handles a civil service and armed forces payments in Nigeria. However, the effect that this had was that it completely removed all transparency from the payments of the Nigerian Immigration Service system. So essentially, when I spoke to the sources, what they told me was that they don't know how much is coming into their accounts at the end of the month. When a new officer is hired, the new officer really doesn't actually know how much he or she is going to get paid. They simply don't know. So the deductions vary wildly from month to month. So let's say, for the sake of an example, let's say your salary is 80,000 naira. This month, the deductions might be 12,000 naira. Next month, deduction might be 27,000 naira. You have no idea what it's for, how much is going to get deducted, what is going to come into your account at the end of the month. So what this has done is that it has created this sort of ad hoc culture within the NIS where everybody's just desperately trying to make money whichever way they can, which obviously for a service whose main public-facing activity is issuing passports, and obviously passports are in demand in Nigeria, are always in demand, and people are willing to pay a premium for those. So that then creates that situation where everybody is trying desperately to make money off the passport distribution process. So when there's a huge passport shortage, apart from the issues with the supply chain of the passport booklet itself, the company that prints them in Malaysia having forex issues and whatnot, one of the major problems with the major reasons why Nigerians cannot access booklets in a reasonable space of time is because there's so much arbitrage going on, and there are so many hands that need to be greased because of this IPPS, this rushed IPPIS implementation, which has taken all transparency away. So everyone within the immigration service is trying to make money at the expense of Nigerians who are just trying to get their passports. So, and then the third person mentioned was Abdullahi Liman, who is the PCO. He's a Deputy Comptroller General. He's in charge of the Ikoyi Passport Command, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the most important passport commands in Nigeria. Now, every source I spoke to about this fellow had very uncomplimentary things to say about him. Essentially, that this is the spearhead of modernization in Nigerian immigration service. That this guy didn't just ensure that most of the Southerners working at the Ikoyi Passport Command were transferred out and replaced with Northerners, with his kinsmen, but that he takes it to such ridiculous extents as, for example, speaking exclusively Hausa during work hours. So you're a Southern immigration officer working at the passport command, you don't speak Hausa, you're at a disadvantage because he's more likely to have conversations with even your subordinates, even your juniors in your presence, and you don't understand what they're saying. They're speaking Hausa in your presence. And that, for example, where there's a Southern officer and there's a Northern officer working together, maybe doing the data capture, and it's time for a Muslim prayer or something, and the Northern officer, who is obviously a Muslim, will just get up and go out and say he's going to pray, and the Southern officer has to continue working, essentially doing two people's work, and that this is officially sanctioned by Lima. That is how things are done at the Ikoyi Passport Command now. And that this obviously has had a predictable effect on staff morale within Southern ranks, has also created the conditions for ethnic and religious conflict within the Ikoyi Passport Command of the NIS, and that he himself is his second major goal, apart from the organization of the Ikoyi Passport Command, is also to make money. So under him, there are all sorts of opaque processes which are not written down anyway, which are part of the process of issuing a passport. There are things that didn't include in the reports because they were just sort of things that the sources said, but they're very difficult to independently confirm. But essentially, when you simply walk into the Ikoyi Passport Command and you do your data capture and you pay your money and you expect your passport to come out within, let's say, a month, that you really don't know what is going on because there's an entire network of palms that need to be greased. There are sort of ad hoc processes that have been instituted which are not part of the official stated process anywhere, which Abdullahi Liman has sort of put in place with the sole express intention of making money for his cronies, so to speak, and that this has destroyed staff morale. This has made it even harder for people to access passports. The Ikoyi Passport Command has the largest backlog of passport production in the country. And funnily enough, I'll just quickly mention this before I go back to you. Funny enough, almost as soon as the story came into the public domain, came into the public space, the new Comptroller General of Immigration, that's Idris Jerry, immediately ordered a task force to be deployed to the Ikoyi Passport Command to deal with its backlog, because I'm sure even within the immigration service, it was quite well known that under Lehman's leadership, the Kogi Passport Command had a huge and unjustifiable backlog. And for the purposes of optics, it was expedient to do something about that now. There were also, from my sources within the NIS, Abdullah Lehman has also been summoned to Abuja. There's been issued a query, has been summoned to appear for his boss. So we wait and see what the outcome of that would be.
Well, there's so much, to unpack from all of this, and I've heard people complain many times, that online, to get a Nigerian passport is about 13 or 17,000. But when you go to the office, you end up paying as much as 45 or 50,000 naira if you hope to get it, and nobody has ever been able to understand why it is that high. And, if you speak with them, they tell you they need to buy diesel, they need to settle here, they need to, just many frivolous excuses. But that has gone on for a long time. And I'm sure it makes you wonder how much really gets back to the government compared to how much gets into pockets. And the millions and maybe even billions of naira that is made in that office that never gets back to government coffers.
Exactly.
But that's an angle, on its own. Now, I want you to speak more on the discussion on Olayinka Fisher and how his position may be dangerous to the Nigerian, to Nigeria itself and those who have their information with ISTL. Why is this a problem that he is, of course, the head of ISTL and he has access to this information?
Right. So it's important to know that ISTL itself doesn't actually print passport booklets. So it's affiliated with a Malaysian company called Iris Corp, which actually does the printing. They do security printing, not just for Nigeria, but for a number of African jurisdictions as well.
Yeah.
So they do things like printing passport booklets, printing currency bills, that sort of thing. Now, ISTL essentially is, to all intents and purposes, a tech support company because they don't actually have any sort of physical products. What they do is essentially database management and equipment management on behalf of the NIS. Now, essentially what this contract with ISTL does is that it makes it near impossible for the immigration service to actually wield control over the data that you and I submit when we go to the office, your biometric data, your biodata, all those things. The database those things are saved in is an ISTL database. Now, the database has been, and the equipment were paid for by the federal government. Right? They're not paid for with private funds. They're paid for with public funds, right? But the total control over the database and the equipment that makes the database possible is vested in ISTL. So essentially, the government is subservient to this private entity which it gave a contract to. So essentially, the day that ISTL decides that something isn't going to work, it's not going to work, and the NIS can do nothing about it. And to just give an example of this, in 2017, the initial contract was awarded in 2007 for 10 years. 2017, when the contract ran out, there was a huge furore because people within the NIS at the senior levels were grumbling that this contract should not be renewed, this contract is bad for national security, this contract gives too much power to ISTL. And there were indications that there was a power tussle between ISTL and people who wanted the contract taken away. Obviously, the people who wanted the contract taken away were not necessarily doing so for altruistic purposes. They probably had their own interests that they were trying to serve. According to what I hear, some of them had their own companies that they wanted to use to replace ISTL, not necessarily to change status quo. But putting that aside, in 2019, all of a sudden, we just heard that the contract has been renewed after the matter dragged on for 2 years. Why was it renewed? Essentially because the Nigerian government didn't have a choice. ISTL has the Nigerian government with its hands tied behind its back. If ISTL decides that, okay, you want to pull out, fine, we'll scatter everything. There's nothing the Nigerian government can actually do. The database is fully vested in ISTL, and worse than that, there's a government seal which essentially makes a Nigerian e-passport valid, right? And the control of that seal is with ISTL. It's, again, not with the immigration service. So ISTL has the power to essentially create a Nigerian citizen out of thin air. And I have a very big problem with that because essentially what that means is that this company, which is run by a drug trafficker who used to use his diplomatic status to traffic, drugs across borders into jurisdictions like the US, now has the power to create passports, to create Nigerian citizens. So, it doesn't take much imagination to think about the implications of that. So what has this power been used to do over the past, 15 years that we are not aware of? I obviously don't want to speculate on national TV, but I mean, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see where my line of inquiry is headed. And then the Malaysian company that prints these booklets, Iris Corp, has actually the executive leadership of that company, specifically the CEO, has been arrested as recently as 2017 on corruption charges in Malaysia with regard to the bidding process for the e-passport contract by Guinea, the West African country of Guinea. So essentially, you have this Malaysian company which has been implicated even by its own government for corrupt dealings with regards to how it obtained the e-passport contract to print e-passports for Guinea. That company has the sole the sole ability to print passport booklets for Nigerians, right? And then this company is a subcontractor working on behalf of ISTL. So ISTL subcontracts the printing, which it was awarded to this Malaysian company. And then to get that done, ISTL has to pay the Malaysian company in USD, in hard currency, right? Now, it just so happens that obviously since 2016, the value of the Naira has more than halved in relation to the US dollar. So it has made paying ISTL over twice as expensive as it used to be. So essentially, and the income that ISTL relies on, which obviously comes from Nigerians applying for passports, comes in Naira. So in Naira terms, its income has remained roughly the same. In dollar terms, its income has has halved basically. So it can't afford to pay for printing of as many booklets as it used to. So now the fight is with the CBN, that the CBN should provide forex to ISTL at the CBN rate, at the subsidized CBN rate. And the CBN says, no way, we're not going to do that. That's the CBN under Godwin Emefiele. And so ISTL is forced to source for forex from the parallel market, which, as we know, is touching 600 naira to $1 now. So what that means is that it's almost impossible for given its current naira income, which hasn't changed, it's almost impossible for there to be sufficient passport booklets for Nigerians because it has to pay the Malaysian company in USD. Now, my question is the security printing process. Yes, we know that these security printing materials are not produced in Nigeria currently. We know that the technology to produce these booklets in Nigeria currently doesn't exist in Nigeria. But given that this is an administration which has paid so much lip service to local production and easing pressure on forex demand by import substitution, all these kinds of things. So shouldn't there have been some kind of a move to obtain that technology and to make it possible to print those booklets in Nigeria? Because even from a national security point of view, I find it very hard to accept that a country of, allegedly 180 or 200 million people has to, contract the printing of passport booklets for its citizens.
Company or country. Indeed, David, we do understand that. So we'll dig more into this and find out, in future, what exactly the government of Nigeria is saying, if they can justify contracting this to a company that is now facing corruption charges in Malaysia, and how Mr. Fisher, scaled through the cracks to make it to such a sensitive position in the country. We'll be following up with you for more details, David Dudeyi. Thank you very much for joining us on The Breakfast.
Thank you for having me.
Next up, we'll be talking about the North rejection of the power shift for 2023 and their stance on the VAT controversy after the break. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Let's now talk politics and 2023. Southern governors' stance regarding that big day and that big year is that the presidency should be rotated to the south. And we've been waiting to see what the northern governors have to say about that. And in their meeting yesterday in Kaduna, they came together to speak in one voice to basically back the federal government regarding VAT and to say that they reject zoning to the south for 2023. According to them, they say it is against the constitution. And let's now invite our Mr. Inko Taria as well as Mr. Ahmed Buhari for more on this. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, I would like to begin with Mr. Buhari. How do you respond to the northern governors, their stance on this matter?
Hello, good morning, everyone. It's good to be here again. This is what I think, yeah. I personally have been supporting the notion that a southern president should emerge in 2023. I just think for equity, fairness, and some balance and some sense of belonging, that should happen. But these things don't just happen like that. There are things that would have to happen within the political space. And so someone like myself and some other people in the north who are very, very firm on the fact that maybe there should be a power rotation, which is not cited in the Constitution, but just for the sake of morality and inclusiveness, that power should be shifted to the south. Would have expected that the southern governors or whoever is interested in becoming the president in 2023, which in all honesty, I think it's an issue that is not as important as, good governance that we should be giving to our people at present. But that also at that particular time, I would have expected that rather than go on and say we are a regional set of governors and this is what we must get, we want to have a southern president and it's a must in 2023. I think the right thing to have done was to sit down with governors from the north. They have what they call the governors forum. They sit down and they negotiate. That is what politics is about. You talk to each other, you negotiate, you work around it just because you want to get something. My ideology for politics is very simple. Sometimes and most times you have to stoop low to conquer. But by the time you go out to say outright that, look, we must bring power to the north or to the south, then there's a problem. Because if you look at the history, there are times when the north has actually rallied around a particular candidate from the south, and we gave him all our support. Why did we do that? Because some talking went down, because we discussed, because we agreed, and because we then decided to move forward to support a particular candidate. It happened in 1999.
Oh, we may have lost both our guests.
But Mr. Ahmed Buhari, can you hear us? Mr. Buhari, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, we lost you for a minute. Please continue.
I said very clearly that because this is politics, It has no other space to be discussed but under the political space. I would have expected that these southern governors sit down with northern governors and negotiate this thing out. Okay. But by the time you come out to make blanket statements like must come to the south, then you now see some people in the north who naturally would have been very happy to find the southern and come up in 2023, say, you know what, this doesn't have to be a must. Nobody has come to talk to me. Even in those individual states in the south, nobody comes out to say, I must be governor. You go around the local governments, you go around the stakeholders, you negotiate, you talk to them, you win their sympathy, you win their understanding, you bring superior argument to the table. You don't just say must. When this thing came up last year, I did mention it on this particular platform. I said very clearly, I said, look, this is going to be very bad. If all these governors are friends, if all these governors sit together, then the reasonable thing for all of them to do is to say, you know what, this is what we want, but how do we go about this? We don't make blanket statements, we talk to each other. That
okay,
is
Mr.
what politics is about.
Buhari, that's noted. Let's bring in Mr. Inkotara for his own response to that. Mr. Inkotara, can you hear us?
Yes, clearly, loud and clear.
Okay, how do you respond to the Northern Governor's stance against power rotation to the South for 2023?
Well, first, while I will completely agree with the tenor of the argument of Mr. Buhari, I dissent when it comes to his submission. Yes, I agree. It all has to do with confabulation. It has to do with negotiation. It has to do with lobbying and what have you. That's what politics is all about. But let us not be oblivious of the fact that there is no part of this country that can produce a president without the support of all the sections of the country, especially the North. And so when the Southern governors, I don't know why we'll be quarreling with the word must or shall, as if it is mandatory. When the Southern governors are saying the next president must come from the South, they are not saying willy-nilly. Maybe the problem has to do with the word, the choice of word. Of course, in communication, you must choose the right word from the word basket. You must communicate effectively. But I see this as a decoy by certain Northerners, knowing too well what the Southern governors actually meant. What they are saying, in essence, is that they going by the rotation precedent, going by the rotation policy, that to ensure cohesion, unity in this, because already the tenuous ligations of our engagement is seriously threatened. And so you can imagine, to me, we should even go to the southeast, the Igbos, if we have to talk of unity, if we still want this country, the fissures that we've already seen on the walls of Nigeria to be mended, we should even go to the southeast. So if when the southern governors say it must get to the south, they are not saying to hell with you, Northerners. Not at all. I don't think that is what they meant by saying to hell, whether you like it or not. Because even if you talk of numerical strength, whether spuriously or factually, the North has the numerical strength. So there is no way the South would have just done away with the North on the issue of the presidency. It is not possible. So when the Southern governor said it must come to, maybe the choice of word, it must come to the South, what they actually meant was going by the rotation principle that we have in this country, the next president should come from the South. That's basically what they mean. But the use of the word shall is being exploited by certain mischievous characters who want to use that as an excuse to ensure the emergence of a northern president. That is what I deduce from it. Otherwise, it is not, we are not saying to the North, whether you like it or not, willy-nilly, the next president must come from the South. That is not what the Southern governors are saying. I don't think that is what they mean. That is the truth about it. So it's just that slanted interpretations are now being woven into the choice of word. That is just the problem there. And I don't think the northern governors should dwell on that must, dwell on that shall. It shouldn't be. That would be very unfair. Because if the presidency goes back, if the North retains the presidency, then we are not talking of fairness. We are thank God we talk about fairness, we talk about equity, we talk about justice. I like that. And how are you going to explain those things if the North retains the president? Of course, it's going to further fester the cleavages we have in this country. So what my own take, my submission is that the northern governors should ignore the word shall. should ignore the word must. What the Southern governors are saying is going by the principle of rotation to ensure the cohesion in the country. It is now the turn of the Southerners. Left to me, it should even go to the Igbos. Not when they say South, I know we're talking of North and South. The whole of this side is referred to as the South, the whole of that side is referred to as the North. But it should actually go to the Southeast.
All right.
That is my take on it.
Hold on,
so
Mr.
we should not
Nkotare.
dwell on the word shall, must, and mandatory. No, we shouldn't dwell on that. That would be unfair.
Okay. Ahmed Buhari, I'm coming back to you now. Mr. Nkotare has said that, the northern governors are really only playing tricks with, some of those words that are being used and trying to, feed off whatever sentiments, that can be gotten from there. So I want you to respond to, Mr. Nkotare's thoughts. And also, I'm sure that, in the past, we've seen some of these same northern governors and northern leaders seek, the idea of rotation. They have also, asked that, it's time for the North, and we've heard those things before. But this time, suddenly, from what you're saying, it seems like they now want to be negotiated with, which might seem like, they need to be begged, to allow for the, Southern president in 2023. Does that also seem a little unfair? Even if, yes, you've pointed out must and shall, as one of the challenges, but doesn't it still seem a little unfair to the south, part of southern part of Nigeria, and to the southeast in particular, and those who have, been made promises to in the past that very likely it will come their way?
So I remember during the build-up of 2019, when I contested for the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I made it very clear that I think the next election cycle should go to the South. At that time, I know a lot of people from the South said it didn't matter, that capacity was all that mattered. People hear these things, people remember these things. And so when it comes back again, people will tell you, I thought it was about capacity. This is what I think, yeah. I appreciate the fact that Nkotare all of a sudden has become an English teacher with making us understand that sometimes the usage of certain words would not necessarily be what it means. It's hard for me to understand it. I mean, these are highly placed men in society who have a lot of following, who should always try as much as possible to present themselves in the light that would promote unity and fairness and justice like they actually claim. But, when you segregate yourself and put yourself in a regional perspective and say this is what we want, you send bad vibes, to be honest. And yes, you beg. Buhari contested since 2011 or so. Before 2011, 2003, he's been saying, I want to be president, until he was able to actually subdue himself, present himself before the South, and begged. It didn't happen for him. Yes, it is politics. That is what you do. That is how you get the sympathy and the support from all over the sides. And you see, you are not making it seem like it's a northern governor's problem. I remember people like El-Rufai say the power should be shifted to the South. I remember people like Lalong say power should be shifted to the South. But when the southern governors saw that a few of the governors from the North are actually tilting their direction, what they would have done was to sit down, even if it has to be closed-door meetings, and say, you know what, we really want this to happen. Amongst ourselves, these are the candidates that we have pulled out for the possibility to become president in 2023. We want your support. Do you point us to other people that you think can help us actualize this dream? Not go on air and say, we must do this. And you know what that did? That actually created a divide. Whether we like it or not, in the minds of the people, a divide was created. And each time, I repeat, each time people in this country pull themselves to the side and say, we are Arewa Consultative Forum, or we are the Niger Delta people, or we are the Southwest people, what it does, it actually reminds us that we cannot be united. And it is wrong. What we must do, especially as leaders, is to promote what we call inclusivity, unity, put ourselves together. That is what we should do. These men have been into politics for God knows how long. And then when it comes to a time when you're supposed to now make sure that we mend all of the broken or all of the problems that we have, the next thing you are saying it has to be given to you. It does not have to. In reality, I said it very clearly. I said I've always supported for a Southern president to emerge in 2023. And yes, an Igbo president. But what are the Igbos doing about it? Right now, I would have expected the Igbos to have agreed within themselves to say, these are our 4 top candidates. Now we are going to go around the northern states, around the western states, around every other part of the country to say, we want this to happen, and this is what we are bringing to the table. Let it happen, please. You don't just sit down and say you put yourselves together and you're going to decide something. You know what is going to happen? The APC is going to probably present a southern president, and that is when the PDP, the other party that is seemed to be favored or is having an inclination with the southeast or south, will now present a northern candidate. And guess what? The northerners will vote for a northern candidate. And again, whether regardless of the political party, a northern might emerge. We must understand the politics and understand that we must, in all sincerity, play this game like it is. It is politics. You cannot expect a man who plays basketball to go into a football field and use his hand to hold the ball. It will be foul. Let's get it straight.
Okay, so when we talk about zoning, rotation of powers and all of that, what really is the underlying reason? To give people a sense of belonging and to create, inclusion. But there are other people who, sorry?
I said in reality, it is nonsense talk. Because exactly. What we should be talking about is good governance. I mean, too much emphasis is placed on the presidency. What are we doing in our local corners to ensure that these things are being done right, even from the governor's perspective? I can tell you for free that every governor, the governors in this country are stronger than the presidents. The governors install ministers. The governors install their commissioners. I don't see any president determine who becomes a commissioner in the states.
Okay.
We should ask them for accountability.
We understand your point of view, Mr. Buhari. I want to bring in Mr. Inkotera back to the conversation. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. On the issue of zoning, which he has just condemned, yes, I am one very strong proponent of the best should emerge. But let us also not forget that we have the best in every region. However, when we talk of zoning, for now we cannot discard zoning. Because if we discard zoning, a particular section of the society will feel marginalized, and that will worsen the security situation in that section, which is the southeast. You see, so before you discard zoning and say let the best emerge, but also we also borrow from the best democracies in the world. Let us look at the United States of America, the U.S. In the U.S., you have the college system. Why do you have the college system? So that you take care of the minorities. Because if you look at numerical strength alone, certain states in America will never produce the presidency. And that's why you might have the greatest amount of the greatest number in terms of vote, yet you don't emerge as the president in the United States of America. So you must look at the nuances in every system and in every country and adjust to it. If you talk of cohesion, otherwise certain persons will believe that they have been segregated against, they have been marginalized, and that is where you have this protest, like the one we have in Nigeria that has assumed apocalyptic dimension. So we have to be very sensitive to issues when we are addressing them and when we are looking at them. We must give penetrating thought to them. Having said this, I must tell you the truth. Like you rightly said, APC might bring up a northern candidate, PDP might bring up a southern candidate. No problem, you are going to negotiate. I said initially, from the beginning, look, negotiation, confabulation, lobbying, these are key ingredients in election. You cannot dismiss any, even the North cannot dismiss the South. That's the truth about it. Notwithstanding the numerical strength, they can't dismiss the South. So, because worst case scenario, you're not even going to have an election. Is that what we want? Crisis? Is that what we want? That is not what we want. So and that's why you sit down to negotiate.
Mr. Inkotera, just kindly hold on. Hold on. The question I was trying to ask really was, when people talk about zoning and rotation of powers, first of all, that's not in our constitution. And like, you and Mr. Buhari have been saying, it's something that, both North and South should be able to negotiate to work out how it should be, right? So when we're talking about inclusion of some certain groups, you're saying Southeast, some other people would say Southwest. When we're talking about inclusion, should we now sacrifice inclusion, or rather sacrifice, a competent leader on the altar of inclusion? Is that what it should be? Because there are lots of other economic or political experts that have come up to say that, this zoning really doesn't make sense.
No. You can't say zoning doesn't make sense. It does. Because that is what has guaranteed the continuous existence of the encasement we call Nigeria.
I mean, what they're saying basically is that zoning produces incompetent leaders. That's what they've said.
I heard you clearly. Let me just finish. I heard you clearly. You asked two questions. There are twin questions in one. I just answered one. Now, the second one, I had already answered it. I said, in every region, every section of the society, you have competent hands. So if, for example, you say, let the Igbos produce the next president, the Igbos will ensure that their best hands are presented. So that is not an argument whatsoever. In every section, in every region, you have the best hands. You also have the worst heads. So the issue of competence being sacrificed at the altar, it doesn't even arise. Because if you say, Igbos produce, they'll produce. The North that we are talking about, when you say, okay, you North, you talk about numerical strength, I don't know going to look for the best, and in most times they make mistakes.
All right, Ahmed Buhari.
Even in the South, in most times, like, I will tell you that most Southerners are not pleased with Goodluck Jonathan. I can tell you that. To us, it was an error.
Hold on, Mr. Nkutare.
Let the best emerge. Sorry?
Yeah, no, I'm saying, hold on.
Let the best emerge, you have the best in every region.
Okay.
In every region. So that is not an excuse. That's not an alibi. That is the point I'm trying to make.
All right.
But like you said, is that I'll suddenly become an English teacher. That is not the issue. The issue is I see the emphasizing SHA must have been prodigious. Just a stratagem. Oh, we have something to hold on to right now. To use again. Because if the Northerners are sincerely interested in producing a Southerner, what stops the Northerners from coming? I agree. Some might be agreeing because of the choice of word. And he said, given the caliber of people that made the statement, yes, we agree. But my brother, don't forget that there are times you have slip of the tongue.
All right. So let's bring back Ahmed Buhari. Hold on, Mr. Nkutare.
And go and maintain the status quo. Now, again, it is not in our constitution. But don't forget that when legal imperatives are antithetical to cohesion and legitimate imperatives, we must allow the legitimate imperatives outdistance the legal imperative.
All right, hold on. Mr. Nkutare, kindly hold on. We need to bring in Ahmed Buhari here.
You have military decrees are wrong.
Absolutely. But hold on, Mr. Nkutare. I want to, most of the conversations we're having now are from leaderships on, different levels, Northern Elders Forum, Arewa, or Aneze, Afenifere, many of them. There are different groups, that supposedly speak on behalf of the people. And, the conversations really are starting to sound like these persons, these governors, these heads of forums really are the ones who anoint a president. And it's no longer about the electorate. So, Mr. Ahmed Buhari, I want you to share your thoughts on what you feel from conversations you've had with people from different regions. What do you think the electorate really wants? Do you think that they're interested in the zoning arrangement? Do you think they really would like a power shift to the south? Or they really don't care as long as it's a competent person? What have your conversations been like with the electorate?
So I just got back from my hometown yesterday evening, and to be honest, this is the front burner. Everybody is talking about what 2023 holds. They want to know. They want people like myself to advise them. But, to be honest, I decided to get the feelers from the people. The people, I would say 50% of them do not care what happens, right? The other 50% of them honestly, sincerely do want a Southern president. And this is from the North. And
where in the North are you from? Can you clarify?
I'm from Kontagora. And this is what the people want. In all honesty, some of the people would tell you, we have tried our own. Let's try something else. Hopefully things might get better. But you see, we need, for this kind of things to happen, we do sincerely need the support of the South. And the South has got to be politically intellectual right now. They have to be sensitive. They have to be smart. They have to think deeply before they make utterances. They have to think deeply on how to, meet up with the different regions in the country to let them understand that, look, we mean no harm. We want to work together. We want to support you people. We want to see things happen. Bring superior argument to the table. Not pull yourselves together, have a meeting in the South, southern governors be having a meeting in the south when you can sit down with your northern contemporaries and have the same meetings and resolve. In fact, the governors in this country can actually sit down and resolve with themselves and pick one of themselves, and then we in the other sectors can decide we want to challenge them with our own candidate. After all, it's not like we can point out to say any governor is outstanding, to be honest. So in all sincerity, I want us to take a chill pill. I want us to be sensitive and understand that the governors who came together to say they want power to be shifted to the south are only doing it for themselves and other people. And all of the things that we're doing here today, all the talks we're having, I wish we were actually focusing on how much achievements the governors in the country have achieved. And then we'll now use that yardstick to determine if we even want to see any of them at the helm of affairs when it comes to the office of the president. At the same time, we should also spread our tentacles and understand what is happening in the states, how the state governors are actually addressing issues of insecurity, how they actually address the issues of policy, what are they doing about local government autonomy that the federal government has actually allowed to happen. All of these things are burning issues that we must put to the table so that we can deflect some of this unnecessary divisions that have been created by political warlords and make them understand that they have a responsibility to pay to the people, and it's urgent because time is running out.
Okay, so Mr. Inkotaria, we've been talking about the possibility of dialogue between both governors, on these divides to decide amongst themselves what region the presidency will be zoned to, so that everybody's speaking with one voice and there's some form of unity. But what's the likelihood? Do you see that happening anytime soon, that the northern and southern governors would agree on a meeting and they won't back out just a few hours at a time? They would actually fix a time to meet across party lines, across regional lines, come together, meet and decide on a zone. Do you see that possibility?
There has never been a time when a particular zone has been excluded from participation. Never. Even when you say the turn of the south, you have the northerner. You say turn of the north, you still have southerners who are going to contest. So talking of agreeing, reaching accommodation on prevailing on a particular region, not to present a candidate, that would be batting on the city wicket. It's not possible. However, having said that, I strongly agree that we need to discuss, because that is the only way forward. And I want to tell the likes of Ahmed Buhari to please go back and tell his constituents, because he has his own followership, and tell them to dismiss and ignore the word must. They should forget about the governors who sat at the round table to issue that communique and consider the electorate who are here. Thank God, 50% of the people are also saying, let it go to the south. And if you ask me, I say, let it go to the southeast. So that we all have this sense of inclusiveness. Everybody believes it's one. And that to a very large extent will calm fairness in the country, because our political engine is overheated and we don't need to worsen it. So if you ask me, yes, it is extremely possible. It has always happened in the past for an ambassador to emerge. For an ambassador to emerge, there was a negotiation to pacify the southeast and the southwest because of the death of NKO. For a year ago to emerge, of course. For Jonathan to emerge, of course, we also have the emergence of Jonathan was almost truncated. It was almost stultified when he eventually emerged. And the truth is, Jonathan lost in 2015 because it is believed that the North had not served that his time. That is the general feeling. So we all need to reach accommodation. We all need to agree. All what we are saying, we are not going to war. We have to judge. We'll sit down to discuss and agree. Of course, tempers are flaring right now, but that should not be used as a yardstick. That is the point I am making. It should not be used as a yardstick.
Okay.
The northern governors, these are governors.
Mr. Inkotaria, you've been mentioning something.
Let me say this, please. Most of these governors are not representing the interests of their state and their regions. They are just there for egocentric reasons. That's the truth about it. But unfortunately, they are like the voices. And that's why we have people like Buhari and people like us sitting here to discuss this thing and to assuage feelings. So I'm telling Buhari now, Mr. Ahmed Buhari, I beg you, as you go back, tell them that let the presidency go to the south.
Okay.
And they should ignore the use of the word shall.
All right, Mr. Inkotaria, I want to further ask you. No, we just have a few. We have just have a few seconds left on this conversation, Mr. Inkotaria.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about zoning, and it seems that most people are in favor of the South, right? But I've noticed that throughout this conversation, you've specifically said, "I want the South, but I'll prefer Southeast." Are you aware that the Southwest also are clamoring for a Yoruba presidency or a Yoruba nation? So if we eventually settle for the South, do you see the possibility of a unity between Southeast, Southwest deciding on who they should bring? Or we'll still have that division even among the Southern region on which area, South or Southwest or Southeast, which should now come up with the presidency?
There can never be 100% agreement. Even in a family, you have disagreements. There can never be 100% agreement, but majority will have it today. Like Buhari rightly said, he said even in the Southeast, he doubts, he feels the ability of the Southeasterners to really come together and present a credible candidate, and that he expected them to start lobbying, or to have started lobbying, which is true, which I have not really seen from the Southeast. I think they're even settling for vice presidency or something like that. I've not really seen that. But however, we are talking of fairness here. We are setting the roadmap. We are like gatekeepers. We are talking of fairness here. If they say it should get to the South, we should also all agree, just as we are arguing now, we should all agree that let it get to the Southeast. I know of the South. I'm a Rivers man. I know of 1, 2, 3 Rivers persons that want to contest for the presidency from Rivers. But I want to be fair. I want to be honest. Let it get to the Southeast.
All right.
When we get to that, we are going to cross it because it's zoned to us. When it is zoned to us, then we will now have our own discussion, internal discussion. Okay. Whether even if we say it should get to the Southeast, you will see a Rivers man contesting. You will see a Yoruba man contesting. No doubt about that. But it has been zoned to us. Then the what is left is just lobbying, negotiation, confabulation, discussion. That is what is left.
All right, Mr. Inkotaria.
At the end of the day.
Opunabo Inkotaria, former advisor to the River State government. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. And also Ahmed Buhari, former presidential candidate in 2019. Thank you also for your time and for speaking with us this morning.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. And this is where we will be wrapping up the discussions on the Tuesday morning. Thank you so much for sticking with us all through the breakfast. If you missed out on any parts of our conversations, remember where to catch up. It's simply at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook, Instagram. Same with our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica. I am Osal Guillen, Ogbon.
And I am Annetta Felix saying, have a great Tuesday.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
Now 500 naira they collect them. If you no talk, then go beat you. Now 2,500 and they pay.
for upcoming artists to blow in Nigeria.
Welcome to Plus Trending. I am Bookie November, your host, saying thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Welcome back. It's tea time on Plus TV Africa.
Practice makes perfect. I'm not perfect yet, but I'm a lot better than I used to be.
He's a king. He's entitled to marry 100 if he wants to.
For me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly made in Nigeria.
Made in Nigeria, showing every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. and repeats on Saturday at 8:30 a.m. Increase the reach of your events or business services. To advertise on Plus TV Africa, please call 0906 000 5719 or 0909 040 8408 or send an email to marketing@PlusTvAfrica.com. Plus TV Africa. Big stories live here.
Now, thanks for joining us on Plus News Brief. I am Destiny Momo. After more than 5 hours of meeting in Kaduna, governors of Nigeria's 19 northern states have decided to say no to the collection of value-added tax by states. And this is at variance with the resolution of their southern counterparts. The Northern Governors Forum is hinging its decision on two stands. One is that the matter is in court. The second is that VAT is not a production tax like excise, but a terminal tax paid by the consumer.
The Northern State Governors Forum considered the ongoing national debate on collection of value-added tax, VAT. As responsible leaders, while we are concerned by the fact that the matter is sub judice, we, however, for the purposes of educating the public, make the following observations. A. The judgment of the Federal High Court calls to question the constitutionality of VAT, withholding tax, education tax, Niger Delta Development Commission, National Information Technology Development Agency, 13% derivation, National Economic Development Council, and many other currently levied and collected by the Federal Government of Nigeria and the Federal Inland Revenue Service. B. Rivers and Lagos State government had enacted their own VAT laws, and the Southern Governors Forum have expressed support for this course of action. C. VAT is being confused by these state governments as a sales tax. If every state enacted its own VAT law, multiple taxation will result in increase of prices of goods and services and collapse in interstate trade. VAT is not a production tax like excise, but terminal tax which is paid by the ultimate consumer.
The Northern Governors are also against the zoning of the presidency to the south. A According to them, anybody from any region can run, and 25% of votes cast in 2/3 of states should determine the president-elect in a runoff.
For a power shift to any three geopolitical zones in the South with a view to promoting unity and peace in the nation. Notwithstanding their comments, the forum unanimously condemned the statement by the Southern Governors Forum that the presidency must go to the South. The statement is quite contradictory with the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, that the elected president shall score the majority votes, score at least 25% of the votes cast in 2/3 states of the Federation. C, in the case of run-up, simple majority will win the election.
The Apex Igbo Sociocultural Organization, Ohaneze Ndigbo, worldwide, on Monday called on IPOB to embrace dialogue. IPOB advised to stop all forms of anarchy in the land. The President General of Ohaneze Ndigbo, Professor George Obiozo, appealed for a return to normalcy in Igbo land. He made the appeal at the annual celebration of Igbo Day, and according to him, IPOB leaders should take note of the danger violence has posed in Igbo land. He added that the Southeast geopolitical zone must avoid being a race that has voluntarily chosen to perish in violence and insecurity. He said what is happening in Igbo land today, Imo, Anambra, Enugu, Abia, and Ebonyi states, is not liberation, but destruction and devastation. And northern state governors on Monday held an emergency meeting in Kaduna. It was to discuss the progress and major concerns of the region. Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State is the chairman of Northern Governors Forum. He said the 19 governors would also look at critical national issues that had emerged over the recent months, and that's with a view to coming up with a position of the region. He said the forum would also adopt the best possible approach to ensuring that the interest of the region was protected and promoted. And security agencies have reported the killing of 34 citizens in an attack in Kaura local government area. According to the report, unidentified gunmen attacked Madamai village in Kaura local government. The troops mobilized to the location and also came under fire. Then they forced the assailants to withdraw after an intense exchange. Some houses were set ablaze by the attackers at one end of the village, and the troops put out the fire at 3 of the burning houses and rescued 6 locals from the inferno. As of the time of this update, the 34 residents have been confirmed dead following the attack. 7 others sustained injuries and were rushed to a hospital in Plateau State. And Governor El Rufai has stated that the Kaduna State government will bear the full cost of injured victims' treatment.
But to make viewers know exactly what is happening, I think there's a mix-up about this story. This whole story, there was no church that was attacked yesterday in Kaduna. What happened is that it's a community of Christians, so gunmen came into that community after church service, not in church. They didn't meet the people in church. The people had even dispersed and went home. They kidnapped 27 people. And as they were trying to get out of that community with them, someone who is a Christian was coming into that community unknowing what was happening. Then he was asking questions and the gunmen opened fire on him. I feel the Commissioner on Security didn't do enough search and went out to give such a story that is big today in Nigeria, but it's not true. There was no church that was attacked. The real community that were attacked and people were killed is in Kaura local government. We know that over 40-something people were killed last night. But this story that is, we understand that this story has nothing to do with the church building. And why I'm saying this, emphasizing it, is what exactly do they want to achieve by bringing such kind of story that a church was attacked? Quote me, there was no church that was attacked yesterday. The attack that happened in Kaduna State yesterday was actually kidnappers that kidnapped a community, not in the church. They were not during service. And as they were going, this man that you learned that was killed was actually a visitor coming into the community.
And so the Kaduna Church attack has been generating reactions, and Reverend Joseph Hayab, the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Kaduna State Chapter, he came out to say no church was attacked. He said that the only person that was killed was a visitor and he was a guest during our Plus Politics.
It's been 82 days since the abduction of the Bethel Baptist High School student in Kaduna State. It is saddening that the abducted students have been released in batches. The first was a child released on the 12th of July on health grounds. The bandits released 28 students 13 days later. Meanwhile, 14 students escaped on the 22nd of July, and 4 of them were re-kidnapped same day. Then on August 22nd, the bandits released 15 abducted students, while on the 28th, another batch numbering 32 were also freed. On the 17th of September 2021, a set of 10 students were released, and on the 26th September, an additional 10. The chairman of the...
We're doing our best to get this student out, and nothing more. And because the government seems to be smarter with media, she threw a question, an issue to the media, saying that she's not going to negotiate. Nobody has ever asked the government to negotiate.
While it is the primary responsibility of the Nigerian police force and other agencies to maintain law, order and safeguard the lives and properties of the citizenry, the chairman of the Christian Association, however, says efforts made to them to help secure the release of the abducted student were abortive.
We are talking with the police, we are talking with the SSS, we are talking with different security agencies. They will tell us a lot of stories, but none of them had ever. There was a time even when some of our children escaped from the bush and came back, the police announced to the world that they rescued them. You know, if we start exchanging words with them, because someone who escaped on his own and come back and you say you rescue him, we just begin to have issues among us. So for now, we take it the way we are hearing. Our children are still with the bandits. They are not back. No effort from government or security agencies to rescue our children.
Out of 121 abducted persons, 120 are students, while one is a matron who caters to their needs. So far, a total of 110 have been released and 109 released on ransom since the sad incident occurred. Mercy Ebopo for Plus TV Africa. It's been 82.
And then the Federal High Court Abuja has adjourned a suit seeking to challenge the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's eligibility to vie for president. It's been adjourned to December 6th. Justice Iyange Court adjourned the matter following inability of the parties in the suit to regularize their amended processes to accommodate the fifth defendant. The group, Unincorporated Trustees of Egalitarian Mission for Africa, EMA, is challenging Atiku's eligibility to contest for presidency on the grounds that he is not a Nigerian citizen by birth. However, when the matter was mentioned, counsel to Emma, Raphael Oyewole, said though the matter was slated for hearing, he regretted that he had to file a motion for an extension of time, and that's because he was yet to serve some of the parties in the suit. And Justice Taiwo of the Federal High Court Abuja has ordered the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, to take over the prosecution of former Governor of Imo State, Mr. Ikedi Hakim. The police had initially filed criminal charges against Hakim over the alleged threat to the life of an Abuja-based woman, Ms. Chinyere Amuchenwa. And while waiting for Hakim to be arraigned in court, the police later filed a notice contesting the suit. And the same day, the AGF informed the court that he had taken over the prosecution of Hakim. And the Federal Road Safety Corps has said over 1.3 million people die annually in road accidents, and that is thousands of people permanently disabled. And drivers need to be extra cautious when driving to minimize the carnage on our roads.
We're in the Ember months again, and to reduce the road carnage associated with the period, the FRSC is sensitizing road users, particularly drivers, on safety measures. Maintain safe speed, avoid night travel, and enjoy quality road experience. That's the campaign theme. Here in Adamawa, the commander assured the sister agencies of working hand in hand. The goal is towards Operation Zero Tolerance of reckless driving in the state and in the country at large. The sector commanders disclosed that the Federal Road Safety is always working tirelessly in creating necessary awareness for the masses.
This movement is more often characterized with road traffic crashes resulting to loss of lives, human lives and injuries to many innocent road users. Consequently, this year's theme of the Ember Months campaign is maintain safe speed, avoid night travels and enjoy quality road experience. It's in line with the corporate strategy goals of the Federal Road Safety Corps for the year 2021, which is targeted at minimizing road traffic crash by 15% and fatality by 20%.
The Adamawa State Governor was represented by the Commissioner for Transport, Mustafa Jika. He said the state government was working closely with the FRSC to curb the menace. He assured the general public of creating more roads in the state that would ease vehicular movement, that would reduce the rate of accident in the state capital and beyond.
This phase, the command strategically in the state, has witnessed reduction in road traffic crash, with attendant high awareness on the proper use on the highway due to increased patrol and enforcement activities by the personnel of the corps.
Hopefully, these efforts from the FRSC will translate to more sensitivity from our drivers and more safety on our roads.
And moving on to other parts of Africa, Filsan Ahmed, the Ethiopian minister in charge of women, children and youth, has resigned. She cited reasons of a personal nature that weigh heavily on her personal conscience. On Twitter, Filsan Ahmed announced that she took the decision after discussing national and international issues with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Ms. Ahmed said she was proud of what she had achieved in her ministry. And Economic Freedom Fighters has launched its manifesto on Sunday. The party, which often describes itself as an anti-imperialist and leftist movement, did not hold back in emphasizing the party's capabilities of picking up the slack of what he called the current incapable local government. And thousands of people dressed in red and black came to hear Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, as the party launches its manifesto ahead of local elections on 1st November. The party's manifesto is based on 7 pillars for economic freedom, and it vowed to create jobs for the youth instead of giving tenders to the connected few.
Our manifesto is based on the truthful observation that our people are landless, our people are jobless. Our manifesto is based on the truthful observation that local government is incapable. Our manifesto is based on truthful observation that many people in South Africa still not have access to water.
We have been raining for a long time but doing nothing.
And I hope young people are going to come up in numbers and vote for EFF, because EFF is the solution for unemployment. EFF is the solution for poverty. EFF is fighting for land, because everything that is South Africa is facing.
And now outside Africa, gas station pumps ran dry in British cities on Monday. Vendors rationed the sales as a shortage of truckers strained supply chains to breaking point. A post-Brexit shortage of lorry drivers as the COVID-19 pandemic eases has sown chaos through British supply chains in everything from food to fuel. And that has been raising the specter of disruptions and price rises in the run-ups to Christmas.
A warning not to panic buy seems to have fallen on deaf ears in the UK, as up to 90% of fuel stations ran dry across major English cities on Monday. The rush to fill up deepened a supply chain crisis triggered by a shortage of truckers. Retailers are now warning the issue could batter the world's 5th largest economy. A dire post-Brexit shortage of truck drivers has sown chaos through many supply chains, from everything from food to fuel, and has left consumers fearing price rises in the run-up to Christmas. The petrol shortage came just days after Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government spent millions of pounds to avert a food shortage. That was due to a spike in prices for natural gas and its byproduct carbon dioxide. Reacting to the fuel shortage, the government suspended competition laws to allow firms to work together. On Sunday, it also announced a plan to issue temporary visas for up to 5,000 foreign truck drivers. But business leaders have warned the plan is a short-term fix and will not solve an acute labour shortage.
And U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi set a vote on the $1 trillion Joe Biden bipartisan infrastructure bill. The vote is for Thursday.
As you know, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has delayed a vote on President Joe Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure bill to later this week. It was originally slated for Monday. Now it will be taken up just before government funding is set to lapse on October the 1st. The bill, seen as central to Biden's economic agenda, would help fund road, bridge, airport, school and other construction projects. It passed the Senate last month with Democratic and Republican support. Earlier on Sunday, Pelosi said she would not bring the legislation to a vote until she was sure it would pass and expressed confidence at its prospects. She has, however, not yet set a date to bring to the floor a larger $3.5 trillion social welfare and climate bill, the cost of which has divided Democrats and is still under negotiation. Pelosi did say Sunday it was, quote, self-evident that the larger spending bill might shrink in size. Democrats also have not yet agreed on the timing of the two measures. Some progressive lawmakers insist the $1 trillion infrastructure bill be held back until the bigger one is ready, while moderates want it enacted whatever the progress on the larger package. All this as Congress fast approaches the Thursday deadline to continue funding federal agencies or face the second partial government shutdown in 3 years.
And in business news, Nigeria has fallen behind Egypt in foreign direct investment, according to the African Development Bank, which released a new report that 4 African countries accounted for 80% of investments coming into the continent. Nigeria was placed among the top 3, with South Africa coming third. The new report, titled Entrepreneurship and Free Trade Volume 2 and Towards a New Narrative of Building Resilience, revealed. And between 2011 to 2020, the FDI into Egypt was put at $56.2 billion, and that of Nigeria was $45.1 billion, a little above South Africa, which recorded $41.3 billion within 10 years. The report further stated that about a third of the incubators, accelerators, and 80% of investment into Africa are housed in Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. And in entertainment news, R. Kelly has been found guilty of running a scheme to exploit his fame to sexually abuse women and children over 2 decades. And 11 accusers, 9 women and 2 men, took the stand over the Syrian 6-week trial, and they described the sexual humiliation and violence at his hands. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Kelly guilty on all the charges he was facing. He's due to be sentenced on May 4 and faces decades behind bars.
Based on the evidence, why should he anticipate this verdict? When you go with a discovery, you saw witness after witnesses giving 3, 4, 5 different versions as to what they said happened here. The government cherry-picked the version that they thought would be a continuation of the narrative that was first put out by Cheryl Mack and Surviving R. Kelly. And they cherry-picked a version and ran with that version. They totally ignore the inconsistencies that all of these witnesses gave in their debriefing. They tried, and I guess they successfully did it, was to massage it. But it's a situation wherein I don't know if I'm more disappointed in the juror's verdict or the government's action in this case.
To the victims in this case, your voices were heard and justice was finally served. This conviction would not have been possible without the bravery and resilience of R. Kelly's victims. I applaud their courage in revealing in open court the painful, intimate, and horrific details of their lives with him.
The government proved that Mr. Kelly had genital herpes, that he knew that he had it, but failed to disclose it to his underage victims and adults, and that he failed to use condoms to protect them and lower the risk of contracting it. As a result, many of his victims contracted this sexually transmitted infectious disease from him and will be forced to suffer from it for the rest of their lives.
And our sports news, Nigeria's senior national women basketball team, the Tigers, have emerged champions of the 2021 FIBA Women's Afrobasket Championship by defeating Mali 70-59 in Yaoundé. The Tigers' victory in Cameroonian capital city makes it the third consecutive one for them, and having won the championship, the 2017 and 2019 editions. The team, who are now unbeaten in 3 championships, led from the beginning of the game, and but for a few moments, never looked back in dominating game proceedings. They won the first quarter 22-11, but lost the second one at 9-13, and even though they still led the game with 7 points into the long break, the Tigers returned from the break to win the third quarter 28-14 to extend their lead to 21 points. And that's the news brief. For more stories, please follow us at PlusTvAfrica on Facebook and Instagram. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel at PlusTvAfrica and PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle. I am Destiny Momo. Thanks for watching.
It is engagement we need to have.
Those who suffer miscarriages are never taken into account.
Members of the National Assembly are also influence peddlers.
You are sitting on Nigerians' money.
From the Babin, I pay my rent. On the Babin, I send my children to school.
A consultative engagement.
No any tangible notification before they ban us.
It's one thing for people to be at your back and the heat of the moment, and another thing for them to still be with you when push comes to shove.
I will do everything to take Lagos out of the national grid.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Welcome to your favorite program, The Moment of Truth, brought to you by the Citadel Global Community Church. Our God is a God of salvation, far above all principality and power and might and dominion.